It's an honor for me to introduce our next speaker, former CEO of VF 143 and CAG 9, and a personal friend and mentor of mine. Last year, we did not get the commander of the Safety Center out to San Diego, but he was willing to come talk to us here in Norfolk. He's a good friend of the Rotary Wing community. Again, Rear Admiral Chris Murray, commander of the Naval Safety Center.
Let it be noted that my predecessor was a helicopter pilot and never spoke to this forum. So, Strike Fighter NFL, I'm here to support you. Okay, so, I'm going to talk to you a lot about, I had to gear this kind of for, a younger audience and an older audience. So, if you see the stuff in the beginning, it's kind of to say, here's what we do, what our mission is, and all the rest of the stuff. The second half of the brief is some really interesting stuff we've done in the last 2 years. So, this has been a real transformation of the Safety Center. So if you were like me and I had to go to my aide right before I came to my first day of work, where is the Safety Center? Well, I happen to be on the end of the helo line out there, and the place has changed significantly. So we don't do surveys anymore. We do assessments. We go in and we look at your squadron and we take a real hard look, and then we come to the commanding officer and we tell the commanding officer some stuff he probably doesn't want to hear, and some probably stuff that he feels good hearing. But it's a completely open, transparent process. We don't do it in absence of the ISIC anymore. The 06 Commodore, the base CEO, the Air Wing Commander, they all are involved in the process. One of the things that really bothered me when I was an Air Wing Commander is sitting up in Lemoore and, I had to fire so-and-so. Well, why'd you fire him? He just didn't get it, or she just didn't get it. Okay, what did you do to teach, coach, and mentor? So I'm trying to hold the 06s in the communities and in the air wings and who are the CEOs of the base to really come back and deliver the product and be part of the process down to the 05 level. I've come to the conclusion that safety is all about the 05 command and the 05 commanding officer. And the culture that that person sets for his command decides the level of professionalism and how you operate the airplanes. So with that, let's go through the brief. Next slide, please. So that's my agenda today, a little bit, we'll go from there. So this is where we come from. In 1951, Naval Aviation decided to stand up a safety center. Now, I think you'd probably be shocked to know that my manning is about the same, focused in the same way, until about 2 years ago when I started moving people around to meet all the customers. So this is going to be all about helicopters. Okay, but I do it for everybody in aviation. I also do it for submarines. I also do it for surface ships, shore infrastructure, special warfare, the whole shooting match. So 1951 we came up, 30 people, 88 people with a flag officer put in there. We have the afloat coming in 1968. I am the coordinator for C&O directly in 73, and then a ground safety department in 92, and then we had the Navy Safety and Environmental Training Center. That's right behind Eli Hall. I own that. They do all the enlisted safety training, and it's manned by an 05 IHO officer as the commander. That's the only command in his community. So a pretty top quality guy from that community there. And then I became the model manager for ORM. I added the Aviation Safety School down in Pensacola. I now own that too. So that entity has grown and changed quite a bit. I will let you know now there is a submarine safety school in Groton. There is a surface safety school up in Newport. Do they same level as aviation? No, but they're a good first start, and we're getting down the road in the other to assimilate the same safety management system. And then in 2015, so no one's ever mistook me for, a transformational guy. I've been kind of a guy that I hold people's feet to the fire in the squadron when I was a squadron commander in the Air Wing, and I try to do what's best. But I had a bunch of great people around me that said, we need to change. We need to become an organization that supports the fleet instead of goes out and fills out checklists. Next slide. So I internally reorganized. ORM is the backbone of everything we do. So I walked into the organization, we had 2 people working in ORM. Okay? 2 civilians and an officer. Okay? So this is the baseline of the way we do business, and we have 3 people. Okay? And they worked under aviation. And that's really not where they needed to be because ORM is the same to everyone. And it's not as well implemented in the other communities. So we basically stood up a larger ORM, lessons learned. So if you know about the Lawrence incident. Everybody knows about that, a really sad incident. So that's on my organization. I failed to get lessons learned from 1982 to now out to the, first you have to get the surface community to realize there was a hazard, and second off, to look at what the hazards were and hazard map it and come up and put controls in place. We had to kill 2 people, unfortunately, to get to that point. So what I've done now is I've made a component of my organization all about lessons learned. And it's not as much about getting lessons learned out, it's about making the TICOMs build websites and tools so lessons learned are assimilated all throughout the community. So we have 2 or 3 people in there, that's their main job. Because if we don't learn from these mishaps, we're going to repeat them in the future. I merged ground and ISH. Those are a bunch of people that I need to put together to get after ground safety. I'm not going to talk about that today. That's a soup sandwich, okay? I'm not funded real well for it, but I need to get after it because these are the people that run the bases, run the airfields, run the piers, run the cranes, and they need more concentration on safety. RMI to IOC. Right now, RMI is not where I want it to be. It's not out yet. You'll get a slide on RMI and what it's supposed to be. But right now we got the screws to the acquisition guys and the contractor to get what we need. And then developing safety management system policy. One of the things I came in when I saw, first off, the aviation safety mishap report from when I was a JO to now has become a monster document. Okay? Is that really being on the all-read board in the squadrons and people going, let me delve through this 35-page document and get the valid lessons learned. No, it's not. So one of the initiatives I wanted to do is I want to make all the mishap investigation reports look the same, whether in a submarine mishap, surface mishap, or aviation mishap. And then along with that, we're developing now a 5-page executive summary. And what that executive summary is this is for the ready room to build a brief off of. And this is also for the staffs who don't have time to go through 26 pages. Along with that, if you go through, it takes us about a year to turn an investigation around and get it endorsed by me, who's the last guy. So what I've done now is gone to the air boss, and I said, air boss, here's the deal. The only people that should be endorsing this is the squadron commander that had the mishap, the ISIC, okay, and then the TICOM. So he has approved 3 people endorsing. And that's going to cut down on the time. So what I'm looking for is speed to get to the fleet, get the lessons learned out there and stuff like that. So that's where I'm going with that. And also a safety management system policy, maybe why for all our instructions, which I own. Predictive. So greatest reporting organization in the world. I've got 2 civilians up that are my professional investigators. They're as good as any NTSB guy working for them because they've seen more gore and they've seen more accidents than anybody in NTSB has ever seen. However, my goal is to keep those guys unemployed, okay? So what I want to be is predictive. And really that all comes down to one thing. The folks scattered around this audience work as subject matter experts for all platforms, and they are analysts first now. They should be your conduit. If you're a Commodore, HSC, HSM, and you don't know who your analyst is, or at least your safety officer doesn't know who the analyst is, we're failing, okay? And some of the products that are coming out of my Code 10, which is my aviation code, are tremendous. They're monthly updates on hazards, monthly updates on this and that. So this is getting to the Commodores, and it should be getting to the squadrons too. So take a look at those products if you get a chance to see them or ask for them. Executive summary for SIR I talked about. And then developing hazard reporting tool that streamlines reporting. So in my mind, in the commercial sector, when you have a hazard out the plant floor, like someone gets their hand caught and they break a couple fingers, you can sit out there on an iPhone as the plant manager and do the injury report, hit send, and everybody in General Motors knows that you've had an injury and a hazard, and they get about fixing it. Thanks to NMCI, I can't do that, okay? So I'm trying to find some data fields that I can basically, take over. And I'm looking at ASAP right now, so we can really make ASAP hazard reporting. ASAP right now, I think, is kind of pro forma. So for a while there, we now have access to ASAP information. That's owned by Air Forces. But in the beginning, I think, okay, who's the junior guy on the flight? You get ASAP, you get the yellow sheet, they don't call it the yellow sheet anymore, old guys do. You get the flight time report, you do the training, you know, really have to have the flight lead or the senior member filling out ASAP if there is a hazard that you want to identify. So we're going to try to get to where we're going through the IT system to do hazards, because really that's the on-time reporting that helps us immensely, okay? And then, so the ASO and Wardroom standardized SIR training, so we're trying to standardize the SIR and how you produce it, you know, Navy-wide, and the same SIR, so you can look at a submarine SIR, and I'll tell you, if you look at all the mishaps they have in the surface community and submarine community, it's 80% human error, 20% material or maintenance failure. Exactly the same in aviation. It's all about human performance. Next slide. So that's my mission, that's my vision. Preserving operational readiness and saving lives is my tagline. That's what the marketeers tell you need to have. I got one, it's on my coin, I paid for my coin. Okay, so it's a good thing. And that's really what we're all about. We're not here to force procedural compliance, look at your regulations, and do all this other stuff. And then empower sailors, Marines, and civilians, their families, proactive command culture. And basically, what I do when I talk to very junior enlisted groups is, you did ORM today, you just didn't know it. You know, you heard about the road being out, you avoided that road. You heard about conditions on the road that made it good not to ride your motorcycle, and you opted for your car. Things like that for these folks to understand is it doesn't stop when they get outside the fence line. Next slide. There's the School of Aviation Safety that's commanded by Chris Sandin right now. He was my Code 10 before, and they're doing some great stuff. They have a wing safety officer school now that we just stood up last year. We also do the command course, and then we also do the ASO course. If you're not getting a good quality product from the ASOs, then people aren't paying attention, okay? Because what they're putting out there should have you have an ASO that's really well postured to be able to do a mishap investigation. But as someone, I was sitting in the ASO course back in 1983, and I said to myself, my #1 goal is not to have to do a Class A mishap investigation. So I fought as much as I could with people in the squadron to stay within the lines and make sure that never happened. I also tell them that's a good thing too. We do Coast Guard too, we do foreign Air Force folks, and it's very well received. And we did take 8 submariners through this course before they stood up the submarine safety course. I think once they went through our course, that was a little too long for them, so they said, we got to stand one of our own up real quick or they're going to make us do this all the time. Next slide. Next. So this is you'll see this is the standard waterfall chart. You know, we've come up with a bunch of different innovations in naval aviation safety that have allowed us to, you know, knock down the mishap rates. And you think about it, you know, someone like me was sitting in this audience back in the day, and I was going, you mean there was a time when they didn't have angle bend? You know, and things like that. But we've come with a lot of things, ACT, CRM, ORM, MFOQA has been, I'm really a big believer in MFOQA. This community, the HSC community has been very proactive using it. The F-18 community has been very proactive using it and remediating pilots that are not meeting the standard. Very interesting to know that the airlines have FOQA, and because of the unions, they can't go pilot by pilot. That's against the union rules, so you have to basically do it as a behavior thing, like an individual behavior thing. So very interesting on that side. You find the same thing in the medical community. I hope you're in good health, you know, but very hard to remediate doctors too when they're shown to be outliers. Next slide. So here's the good news story for this year. 1, I'm not going to knock on wood. I used to do that probably up until I had this job, because the people out in the audience are doing this, okay? I cannot drive a statistic as the commander of the Naval Safety Center. People sitting in this audience can by how you fly your airplanes, what kind of culture you set in your command or your wing, and so on and so forth. So that's really what it comes down to. So in the U.S. Navy right now, manned aircraft, we have 1 Class A mishap. Last year we had 9. The year before that we had 14. So pretty good downward travel there. Next slide. Marine Corps brethren, not doing as well. The 4 is now 5, with the Harrier being lost down south of here. Okay, so readiness challenges there might be driving some of that, but well, they had a better year than us last year. I always tell people 1 year does not a trend make. Next slide. So, you want to know areas of concern in rotary wing and tilt wing? Well, it's human error, violation rate, unsafe acts. This is what we find in all the stuff we get in our mishaps. Aircrew currency and proficiency concerns, reduced flying hour execution, currency and proficiency during FRTP, and we'll talk about that later. We've done a really nice study that Commander Bill Murphy was behind that showed us some things about flying hours, average flying hours. And then integration of UAV, UAS. You know, this is kind of the problem that no one wants to, it's the ugly guy in the room that you never want to recognize, but we got a ton of these things flying. And a lot of these things are flying over fairly classified bases now. So you're having some issues with these things. And my thing, the biggest hazard for this is I can see one of these things hitting an airliner, especially one that's owned by a civilian. Next slide. So we replaced the safety assessments in April 2015. We have done 64 rotary wing, tilt rotor squadrons in the Navy and the Marine Corps since we've done this. So when I tell you what we have, as far as our findings, this is what people tell us, okay? So there's been numerous times when someone's come back and go, I got Manning problems, you know? And we go back to the Commodore, or we go down to the TICOM and say, are there really Manning problems? And they bring out the DVR. No, there's not. It's more times than likely a fit-fill problem instead of a Manning problem. So take it for what it's worth. I briefed the DCA and the Air Boss on all this. So the optic from his community that's projected out to me, he knows that 100%. Therefore, he has to engage with the community to let them know what he's doing to fix this if it's a problem, or to explain it if it isn't. So, Manning, lack of experienced personnel across the community forces COs to put junior personnel in senior billets, cause concern for supervisors, junior personnel training junior personnel. And then lack of Manning experience negatively influences the squadron ability to sustain high op tempo. Next slide. Training, lack of adequate flight time, grades proficiency, leads to future instructor-based concerns. That's the 500,000 hour first tour guy. Loss of maintenance corporate knowledge, transferring maintainers across TMS. TMS reduces knowledge base. Equipment, lacks of parts. You know, the flight gear stuff is mainly in the VP community. There's a little bit in the helicopter community, and there's none anywhere else, but we do get that every once in a while, and everybody shakes their head from the supply side, but it's there. And then facilities issues. These are the things that we ask the base CO to look at. So, you know, what's your flight line look like? What kind of nav age do you have? What kind of precision approaches can you fly? And what's the plan to fix that? So it's a holistic look at everything that affects you. Next slide. So RMI, the application, there's the why. So right now, I got Wes. Everybody in here like Wes? No one needs to raise their hand. I know they don't. Okay? Wes was put in place. It was bastardized. Oh, by the way, aviation did it first, so we have the worst mechanization of anyone, and the SWOs have better mechanization than we do because they didn't desire to have it or thought they needed it until down the road. So Wes for the SWOs is better. RMI is going to fix a lot of this stuff, and the whole first module is about speed of reporting. As I said before, I'm not happy with RMI right now. We're hoping to get it out sometime next year to the fleet, and if it meets the requirements that we've set for it, it's going to be a quantum leap in database management and safety, and going to be very, very good to use. Now, the NMCI Nazis, to get it out on the boat, is going to take a little time. If you're on a small ship. If you're on a carrier or a big deck amphib, you can go off the web, because you got the bandwidth to do it. Next slide. Lessons learned, I talked about this already. So, we do a quarterly safety report, and we give that to the TICOMs. The TICOMs get that, and that goes down to this level of granularity. I can tell you what community generates the most motorcycle fatalities in the Navy, and we brief that to the TICOMs. And along with a lot of other things, we also go in there platform by platform and rank the hazards and what you should be looking at. So if you're not mitigating the hazards, you're not reading this report. But this goes to the TICOMs. I don't go directly to the wings. So if you're a Commodore right now and you're not seeing this, that means your safety officer isn't asked the TICOM for it, but the TICOMs, I've beat them up significantly at Land and Pack to get this out to you because this is great information. Next slide. That's the quarterly analysis report. safety trends and concerns. It's for the TICOM, but it's for everybody else. And these are the things that we've come up with from the quarterly safety report that have analyzed, that have identified hazards and done some really good things. Next slide. And then I talked about the analysts in the safety center, the monthly safety grants. I saw a couple copies of those as they went out to the fleet, and the helicopter community very well supported with some really fine people doing really good work. Okay, so we've been asked to by Air Forces to do some analysis projects. So we've done analysis projects on the at-risk squadron identification, predicting squadron risk. So I briefed the air boss via the email, and I'm waiting to get back. But we've done a really nice job going after the high mishap squadrons and the low mishap squadrons in the communities and finding out when they're having mishaps. And the most prevalent thing I can tell you is a significant change in flight time is a high risk situation. So if you're going from a low to a high or a high back down to a low, you also have to look at the mission. If you're coming off of a deployment and you haven't done something significantly while deployed, then coming back and doing that when your flight time gets cut in half in the sustainment phase is another high risk. But what has been produced for this is a risk assessment checklist for the squadrons to fill out. In my perfect world, it would be CO, XO, department heads, hey, let's all go fill this out, come back together and meet and see how our grades. And you're going to get to a certain point where you're going to want to call us, okay, to take a look at the squadron. But there are some things. We know the change of command now, statistically, a change of command has a 3-month prior and a 3-month after high risk period. So for 6 months around the change of command date, you're going to be in a higher risk scenario. And I think everybody intuitively knows that. That's kind of an urban legend throughout the aviation community. But this gives you a way to numerically assess your squadron. And hopefully the air boss will get this back to me and I'll be able to get it out to the fleet in threat and assessment deep dive, hazards and common causes, improved survival vest rollout monitoring, back and neck injury analysis, the back and neck and helo community, big deal. Okay, I think that we're going to have, unless we get after this, as far as the medical people go, they got to get after finding out what the hazard is. And then my feeling is 10 years from now, we're going to have a bunch of people walking around with bad backs. And you're going to, oh, what helo did you fly? And then people like me with bad necks, how much did you fly NVDs? Okay, unfortunately, you get both in one mission. So the helmet's very heavy with NVDs on, and I know there's neck strain going on. So we need to get after this now before we hurt people in the future, long term, for disabilities. And then quarterly report inputs, analyze data from rent whammers and safety assessment results to provide trend analysis. So we're very actively involved in all this. Next slide. Okay, this is predicting squadron risk. We looked at a bunch of different factors. The deployment workup and detachment dates. Guess what? If you're on deployment, you have a higher chance of having a mishap than if you're not on deployment. I think everybody knew that, okay? Our assessments, we found that, about 6 months before and 6 months after when we come in, you're gonna knock the risk down a little bit, but it goes back to normalizing it after that, okay? So we're not drinking our own bathwater and saying we're making you a gold-plated squadron after we see you. The culture workshop has some effect. Change of command I talked about. A, B, and C mishaps, hours, and the number of pilots in the squadron. So there's all figured into the risk assessment checklist. And we figured out the work and created the worksheet. Next slide. There it is. Hopefully I can get it out to you guys in fairly short order. I asked the Air Boss to brief it at the 0506 Commanders Conferences on both coasts, and hopefully this will be a good tool for you. Next slide. Bottom line is, we're going to hopefully get down the road of identifying the squadrons most likely to have a mishap, and then the squadron can be used as a tool for squadron, basically for you to use and see when you're in higher risk situations. And then changing flight hours is the predominantly driving factor here. Next slide. Our fleet support, we're there for you. If you have a mishap, hope you don't have a mishap, but producing the SIR, if you need help, we can help you, okay? If you have the Hulk, what's left over from the crash, we can help you a lot. We got 4 guys that have gone through all the schools, and they can get you a lot faster down the EI route to NavAir than anybody else can. So don't try to do that on your own. We never designed aviation safety school to be to that level of expertise. Now, there are some people that have gotten to that level of expertise, so that's not what it's designed. And then we provide all the rest of the stuff, to you at a no-cost basis, just because you're helicopter pilots. And then the assessments themselves. Next slide. So the fleet efforts. So hazard reporting, we're trying to push and foot stomp hazard reporting. Good hazard reporting is the way I can do data analysis and find out what the risks are. So these are the things that have helped from the fleet identifying their hazards, and you can read them as well as I can. Next slide. So we need you to report. It's never a problem in aviation. I certainly am concerned with the high incident of sprained ankles playing basketball in port, but I really can't do much about that. Okay? That's the kind of hazardous we get sometime, and we don't ever turn a hazrep down. But if you can get us a good hazrep that's really got some good grist in it, we'll go about doing a trend analysis, and we'll go about looking in the data. Because we got the people that can do it, and we got the only mechanism to do it right now. RMI comes in place, we will certainly have the capability to do it at the wing level for sure, TICOM level for sure, and hopefully at some point the squadron level too. Next slide. Contact information, and I think everyone that has their name up here is within the audience right now. Okay? So if you want to talk to them later, there are their emails. They'll never turn down a request. And, I'm very proud of these individuals and what they've done. So they, usually great place to go for TDY, great place to go to retire. Enlisted guy gets more money, transition. Well, we're not that anymore. Okay? So whatever you need, we're here to support. Next slide. So for me, that's about 25 minutes, and I really get more out of the questions. And if I can't answer one, I've got about 6 people here that will get bad fit reps if they can't give me the answer. Probably. Who has questions?
What was the whole body vibrations assessment?
Sir, that's actually a West Coast. Val Van Zummeren, the safety officer on the West Coast, has been working with several people to do some assessments and testing. They're working on getting a interim flight clearance for the equipment, so they can go out and they're going to put sensors on people riding in different locations in the aircraft and see what kind of vibrations that they're being subjected to, and what does that have to do with how is that affecting our health overall. That's that program.
You're up. Go. You might have to turn it on. There you go. I've always said that the reason to have an NFO in an airplane was to tell the pilot
There we go.
to turn it on.
Commander Rob Hawthorne, sir. Commander Rob Hawthorne, I'm the air boss on USS Essex right now.
Awesome.
The School of Aviation Safety Officer course is recognized Navy-wide as a gold standard for training safety officers.
Right.
Even on ships.
Right.
The float safety officer course is referred to as a joke.
Right.
Have there been any efforts to correct that?
So the one you're talking about is the enlisted training that I do, and that's made for a safety petty officer. The training that they're going to now is up in Newport. So there have been 20 already minted safety officers for DDGs. Now the surface community didn't have a total consciousness moment and say that they wanted to assimilate the aviation model. When they did the fleet safety campaign plan at FFC, we had a terrible year, lost over $1 billion, tons of Class A's. Lacey Admiral Gordon turned to, at the time, Surfland and said, look, you're going to assimilate this model, and you're going to put safety officers on DDGs by Friday. Well, obviously he didn't meet that metric. But now there are 5 or 6 courses up at Newport that are teaching this guy to be the CO's direct advisor. Now when you look at it and you see a lieutenant, you go, but that's right about what a lieutenant commander in a bigger squadron is. So they're assimilating the model. Submarine Safety School is a plowed back 3rd-year division officer on submarines. So this is a guy that's achieved the EP1 and is going to be a selected XO and probably a selected CO, and he sticks around for an extra year as a safety professional. So for an officer to go through the OSH and slip, trips, and falls school that I have over at the Occupational Health and Safety School, yeah, that's kind of a lower level for a safety petty officer. But these are valid programs that we're assessing. Now, are they going to meet the metric of the aviation, the gold standard? Not yet. But just the fact that they're doing this is a huge transformation. And the other thing too, the big thing in surface is reporting. So big deck amphibs, carriers, they all have really good safety departments because there's a huge aviation influence on those ships. But I'm talking DDGs, CGs, amphibs, and all that. And I've found some things in assessments on amphibs through my surface, my float branch that have been eye-watering, okay? I have a post-command DDG guy working for me. That's the guy that runs my float shop, and his deputy is a post-command submarine guy. So the same level of expertise that I have in aviation, I have like expertise now. Before I had LDOs that are fantastic professionals, but it essentially would be, I'm going to go out and do an AMI on a squadron, and it's only going to be maintainers. And I'm also going to look at squadron culture, risk management culture, and everything like that. Once they get above the first level and they're out of maintenance, they have trouble, assessing culture.
Good afternoon, Admiral Captain Silverfield, Tom NHA and WingPack. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to come talk with us.
Happy to do it.
Sir, you mentioned Infoco and the value of that tool and that system. I know HSM and HSC share your belief that the value of that system. Unfortunately, in '98, I'm sure I know you're aware, has defunded it. We're hanging on by a shoestring out there on the West Coast with 2 FRSs having a machine. Do you foresee the funding being restored, or at least the capability being restored in some form or fashion?
That was an Air Force's decision. I did not agree with that, but since it's been made, he's a 3-star admiral, I agree with it now. I do think that the desire was at Air Forces through their safety department is to go to a commercial variant that's cheaper and gives you the same effects. The system is in place right now. It's just not going to move. And my understanding is it'll stay. It won't go away, but it just won't get the capability. Now, I will tell you, even more so, we got to get something in line because now the Air Force is doing stuff with this that's incredible. They're essentially taking, it shows the C-17 graph, and it shows C-17s flying for about 2 months, and it has all the dots on where their flaps and slats are, and they all fit in exactly to the limited curve, and then they have 2 outliers right here. So they go to the outlier squadron and ask them what's going on, and suddenly it's the leading edge of a trend of a failure of the flap and slat system. So they're proactively fixing things before they even become a problem in the airplane. They're getting down the road for that. So my thing is, you're the guys that fund it, you gotta have something. So we have something now, and it's gotta be able to be transformational. They don't use FOCA for nearly as much as they could for legal reasons, unfortunately. And Air Force has access to that too. They have, so I didn't realize this, and it's in the military, but every airliner manufacturer like Boeing and Airbus and everything, in the contract, they get a data download whenever one of those airliners touches down back at home base, and it's all the parameters of FOCA. So they have data pullback from airplanes that have already been bought and paid for in the airlines, and they can do a lot of proactive stuff with that too, which is pretty powerful.
Good afternoon, Admiral Master Chief Dave Cross and HSM Wing Land.
Master Chief, how you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Good
Awesome.
to see you. Understand from talking from your staff, you guys have recently done some manpower review stuff where you're actively seeking enlisted aircrew as part of the Naval Safety Center on your staff. You're probably aware, sir, the Air Boss directed the AW Task Force to work hand in hand to ensure that we had some of that footprint there as well. Sir, do you have a specific point of contact that I could talk to make sure that we're load sharing?
Right there, Kim Thompson.
Aye.
Yeah.
ABT lock. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem. And so, I was at Air Land when I worked with Chris Bailey before, and I was the one, I saw the Hilo Kana be done on a bar napkin in one of the offices there, and guess what? No helicopter pilot was sitting in that room. It was a bunch of strike fighter guys that worked in the N40 doing it, which is, they went back to the Commodores with it, but it was already a premature plan. And I think what you've seen now is we advance the capability of both platforms and try to maintain better capability in the 53. Where are the orties? Okay, so that's a big issue. So when Bingo was Bingo Vincent, he was my helicopter CO when I was CAG. You know, he ID'd that right away, got our ordnance folks out there, and we helped the wing out there write the requirements for the orties and go to the OHO at Air Forces. But, you know, everybody wants operational capability out as fast as possible. But if you don't have the tooth and the tail behind it, that increases the risk significantly. So, you know, if I'm CAG and the HSC squadron gets a whole bunch more stuff, I'm going to tell one of the strike fighter squadrons to give up 2 or 3 orties. And, you know, they're trained orties, they can figure out how to load the weapon and do it safely. But that shouldn't happen. We should try to do the man and train in the same, you know, in the same sequence. And that's the kind of stuff that we're trying, and we would like more of everything. I don't have a V-22 pilot on the staff. I'd like to have one. We certainly do a good job with V-22, but everybody that I can get on my staff that's a subject matter expert in a platform enhances our capability to analyze hazards. People that have been out in the cockpit and know what the community's looking at, and then just people that community knows are huge. So thanks for the question, Master Chief, and we're definitely trying to get folks over there. I have about every enlisted rate in the Navy except for CS. Okay, so I've got every surface rate. I got a SEAL, an SO1, wonderful guy, and he's on his way to Bud's right now to investigate the accident they had in the pool. So, and I have 2 fantastic PRs. So when my assessors come out to your squadron, some of the guys are going to see people 3 to 4 times higher than any person in that rating they've ever seen. And please use them. Now they're going to go out there, they're going to look at FOD walk down, they're going to look at how maintenance control gives out airplanes. Because, oh, by the way, I have a guy, I have the senior CWO5 in the Navy, and he's been a maintenance MMCO in like 7 squadrons, 7 different variants of airplanes. So he knows how maintenance is supposed to work, so he can help. So then we're providing that support along with the risk management culture. What else?
Hey, good afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
Nick Cutter, Surf Pack Safety, actually.
Great.
So I want to first elaborate on the school question for surface forces. There's the float safety officer course that's embedded into the SWAS curriculum. All department heads will go through SWAS to get that. We are definitely involved in changing that curriculum. It's been IH focused too much, and now we're putting more, with the aviation experience, myself and then our counterpart at land, we're putting more mishap investigation and reporting requirements into the course, working with the course manager of the SWAS.
Right.
So, there's a lot of other objectives going on too in the service community. I'm willing to stand by and answer any of those questions. But my question for you, putting my aviator hat back on.
Sure.
The numerical risk assessment tool that you guys are producing seems to be very aviation focused. Is there any slice of that also assess the risk indicators for maintainers?
No, and that's where we're going next. Okay, so the Air Force is leading the pack in that, and they're doing ASAP for maintainers now, and there's also diving into maintenance. I thought you were going to ask me, based on your job, what are we doing for ships? And we're doing a little bit different thing for ships. What we're doing is we've come up with a numerical equation based on 4 or 5 factors on what the high-risk ships by class are. And now and I talked to, and your boss is Bud Couch, right? So once again, a former helicopter pilot, nuke pipeline guy that's running Surf Force safety program. So that's the kind of influence you have in the surface Navy right now, including yourself. But what we're doing is I want this organization to go where they're needed most and not do the 3-year drumbeat. There's some people, based on what we see in our assessment, how much they report, and other things like inspections that TICOM does that could give us a good indication is we don't need to go there nearly as often. And there are other people we need to go there about every other year. And that's what we're trying to get around. And there's ships out there that are undersourced that need to be looked at harder. And we're getting after that too. So that's how we're going with that. And Bud knows what that equation is and how we're going after it. Next. Anybody else? And I didn't have one lieutenant ask me a question. Sure? Anybody else? Okay, well, oh, yeah, cool.
Sir, my name is Lieutenant Commander Greg Sharp. Got a quick question that may be just like a publication review type thing. But the reason why I asked that specific question about OPNAV 5100.19 Echoes is I was a former safety officer on the USS Wasp.
Right.
And the way it seems to be promulgated through updates for that particular publication is to have a safety digest at the beginning of every year that basically states what all the safety messages that are still active.
Right.
So of particular concern, speaking of inspections, was that the Navy Safety Center had promulgated that there would be a biannual inspection by the Navy Safety Center, but the publication said 3 years. So that particular safety digest that came out at the beginning of the year did not include that old message that said that it was a 2-year obligation.
Right.
So there are things that get lost in the constant turnover, and messages that may have still been applicable have not been integrated into the governing publication that everybody would expect to find that type of information. So can you speak to that, sir?
I can speak to that. It's on us. So it's 3 years now, and we made it 3 years to align up with the FFC inspection schedule. So FFC, about Fleet Forces Command, about 2 years ago decided that the inspections for the TICOMs, from the Naval Safety Center, from INSERV, fill in the blank, from ATG, were all not aligned. So they put everybody on a 3-year inspection cycle to marry up that way. Like I said, and the old instruction is every 2 years. Okay, so if that's still out there, we need to fix that. And maybe it's just the function of having it, right? Okay. So that's the answer to that. You know, in all the stuff we're doing, there's a lot of rubble out there. So keep us in the loop on the rubble. Okay. I've tried to go is do as much changing as I possibly can in my tour. For a flag officer, you get about 2 years to make big changes and set the course of the organization. So I've tried to do the big moving parts, but I'll be honest with you, some of the admin rubble is out there. We need people like you to say, hey, what about this? Okay, anybody else? Okay, come on up.
All right. Oh, it's not a gift. I can't take any gifts. It's under the threshold, I promise.
This is under the threshold? Now let's go have the jag. Okay.